Most people who were alive in the 1990s couldn't boast that they had lived in 2 centuries, but Poppo wasn't most people. Born in Lewisport, Kentucky on February 11th, 1899, as Angie said, he, as a young man, moved to the Indianapolis area and worked for Auburn Duesenberg in their factory painting cars. Later, he worked for Curtiss Wright Aviation, building World War II airplanes. And finally, he landed a job at the Blandford Paint and Body Shop, which was a little garage down the street from where he and my grandmother lived in Indianapolis. He worked at that garage until he didn't work anymore, late into his 70s. When Mr. Blandford died, he bought the body shop. He did all the work, he did all the estimates, he did all the bookkeeping, he did it all for this little garage. One interesting factoid about Poppo was that he started smoking when he was 11 years old. Camel cigarettes, no filters, just plain old tobacco, end to end, the bad stuff. And he always said if cigarettes ever came to be $1 a pack, he would quit. When he was 90 years old, he quit smoking cold turkey when cigarettes got up to $1 a pack. So after smoking for 80 years, he quit cold turkey. One of my fondest memories of being a kid, going to visit my grandparents, was that when we went to their little house in urban Indianapolis with their tiny little yard, there wasn't much for kids to do. But they would send us outside with a coffee can full of water and a paintbrush, and we would paint their garage with water. They had a wooden garage that sat on the alley behind their house, and we'd go out there and paint. And you know, when you paint wood with water, it gets dark, just like you're painting with paint, right? So it was good, cheap fun. As Angie said, he died in 1997 at 98 years of age. And as I remembered him on his birthday this year, I considered the monumental changes that he witnessed during his 98 years, almost the entire 20th century. Today I'll talk about the obvious and not so obvious changes of that century. First of all, the obvious ones: commercial air travel and cars, wars, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, not to mention the injuries and mental conditions that some of those soldiers came home with. TV, racial integration. Think of the 60s and civil rights movement during the 60s and desegregation of schools and public places, especially in the South. Space travel, and of course, internet and computers. Some of the not so obvious changes, which I found online at Discovery World, the 20th Century with Mike Wallace, and History Learning Site. Beginning in 1901, fingerprinting and the disposable razor blade. And you might think, disposable razor blade, who cares? But if you were a soldier in World War I carrying a gas mask, your skin had better be smooth so that gas mask fit tight to your face in case of a gas attack. 1902, air conditioning. 1903, crayons. 1904, tea bags. 1906, wireless AM radio. No longer needed wires to carry a message on the radio. And the electric cash register. 1908, the vacuum cleaner, invented by a department store worker in Ohio whose job it was to take the rugs from the department store down into a janitor's closet every night and beat the dust out of them in a closet, imagine this, with dirt streets. People just tracked in all the dirt, so I'm sure the rugs were filthy. Here he is beating the dust out of these rugs, and it's just blowing around in the room. So what's the word? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So he invented the vacuum cleaner. 1913, bras and zippers. 1916, sonar, sound navigation, ranging. 1921, insulin. 1926, the pop-up toaster, but Pop-Tarts came much later in 1964. 1928, penicillin. 1930, Scotch tape. 1935, the electric guitar. That revolutionized our lives, didn't it? 1938, the ballpoint pen. 1946, Tupperware and Tupperware parties. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
1948, Frisbees and contact lenses. 1951, the pill. 1955, the polio vaccine. 1959, seatbelts in cars. 1960, the pacemaker. 1962, transatlantic TV, transmitting images over the ocean. And some of the first really pivotal events that were transmitted around the world were President Kennedy's funeral procession and the Apollo moon missions. 1967, the portable calculator. Those of you who are old enough to remember when the portable calculators first came out, they were so expensive nobody could afford to buy them. And now you can buy them for $1. 1969, ATMs. 1973, Post-it notes and barcodes. 1975, the personal computer. And the rest, as they say, is history. In conclusion, Poppo was for the most part a soft-spoken man. I don't think I ever saw him get really angry. He didn't invent anything or run for public office. He lived a quiet, conventional life. He supported his family and managed to save enough from his business to support him and my grandmama through their 90s. He was a good friend, father, and grandfather who always had a twinkle in his eye. Happy birthday, Poppo.
Great job. Jay, can you give a minute?